Welcome to another GM Tips with GM Rick. I've got a dream from Tangled playing in the background while Mini GM dances. Always fun. So I've got the ability to make hopefully a full video here. We'll see. So this is part 2 of 5 on different climate settings for campaigns. I really want to take a deeper dive into these because I think as you explore writing a campaign and a setting for your players, looking at climates has a huge amount to do with what you can really work with, how exciting it can be, how different from the norm it can be. And I think so often we focus on the temperate climates that we're so used to because it's where all the material is. So let's just put it into a forest, or let's put it into the plains, or let's put it by a lakeside village in a nice, environment where we get the 4 seasons. Well, I'm exploring the more extreme environments. The last one was on deserts. So this one's on the jungle environments. I For me, jungles are one of the most fun and exciting areas to design a campaign around. If I were to pick my order in campaigns, it would be jungles, deserts, cold climates like tundras, and then down into your underdark, and then into your under earth, and then finally the normal environment, the normal temperate places with sea adventures and ocean adventures and island adventures around that kind of climate too. So today, jungles. Why jungles? Well, jungles are both exotic, lush, full of a lot of abundant materials that are sometimes very rare and unique, especially when it comes to herbs and poultices and alchemical materials. Also, they often overgrow whole empires as empires come into decline, so you find a lot of lost ruins in them and exciting things that are very difficult to obtain. So it's another environment that adds to that exotic richness of what you can get out of it as both a GM and a player. Also, another challenge that comes to them are the diseases and creatures that dwell in them. And so often it's hard to establish a frontier, and around most jungles, that's what it is. Frontier towns, small villages, and other places that you normally wouldn't get to find. So, but for me, I think I just enjoy the lure of the jungle, the exoticness, the weird sounds, the setting, the lone villages, outposts of civilization, there where people go to find lost treasures and lost cities. Think of Indiana Jones. Think of Romancing the Stone. All those had a lure when it came to the jungle and what you could find there. And so for me, the jungle has a lot of unique and interesting things that you don't find in an arid area or you find in a tundra area. So let's look a little bit about what kind of empires and areas can grow around jungles. And again, going to hit a couple familiar settings. So I'm picking from 5 settings right now. I'm picking from Numenera for the future and kind of a interesting twist on a different system. I'm sorry, GURPS. I'll have to get into some of yours too. I could actually do uh, Green Ronan's Freeport, because Freeport's on a jungle island area, which is kind of interesting. I'm also going to look at Pathfinder with 2 settings, both the Southlands and the Inner Sea area. And for Dungeons and Dragons, both Faerun and Greyhawk. Though I'm sorry for those who wanted Eberron or Eberron, however you want to pronounce it. I could pick a million settings, and I think I'd never get through these videos if I did. So I'm picking some different ones to flavor it up a little bit for you. So this time we're going to start a little different. We're going to start with Greyhawk. So where are the jungles? There is Hepmonaland and the Amado jungle. And the Amado jungle is the one that's really a lot of fun. That's where a lot of the outposts led by Helm and explorers of the god Helm have set up outposts. It's where your Isle of Terror is based off of an island off of there, and the Mazteca Empire. So the more of what would be the Aztec empires and Inca empires on the world of Flaunis are set. And yes, Flaunis. That's the technical name for Greyhawk. It's more the free city of Greyhawk, but Flaunis for the world. So that's a really cool and exotic area. Dinosaurs, lost empires, creatures and cities of gods like Kemzats and the Bat God and the Fire Gods and the different craziness. I remember as a GM running that and as a DM in my early days with 2.0 and 3.0 and original OD&D. Man, it was a lot of fun. And my players had a lot of fun with it because they were always worried about, am I going to get sacrificed to some idol or something, or are these jungle people going to be friendly to me or just horribly evil to me? And again, it hits a lot of the basics. So for those of you that play a lot of the earlier settings, great place to run, and you can adapt it to 5 pretty handily, from 3, 5, and 3. Now, Faerun, much more jungles, and I love it because your Yuan-Ti, yes, Yuan-Ti serpent folk were all down in that area, and it was a crazy thing. When I ended out my 3.5 campaigns, it was in these areas. In fact, it was in the following jungles. It was in the jungle of Chult and the Black Jungles and the Maher Jungles. So I enjoyed it a ton. Yes, Monsters Inc. with Sully and Mike Wazowski. You got great music in the background with these things. So for me, I love them. There's other places. Don't get me wrong. There's the Shining Plains, the Shalmista, and the Wheeldath jungles as well. But they were not my favorites. They were smaller side jungles. The jungles of Chult I loved because they were full of lizard folk, kobolds, goblins, tribal goblins. They had this setting out of Paizo that you guys will all remember. The Shackled City. Yes, right there, set in the jungles of Chult. I loved it. It was such a crazy place to try to survive. And these were outposts that were established thousands of years in history's past. There were definite areas that had died out during the Age of Worms, where cults went down there and had their cult followings and then died off. So just a plethora of different types of adventure down there. And I had so much fun with the players because they were in constant danger of disease and being eaten by dinosaurs, or getting lost in the jungle, or just, the different types of snakes and other things down there that were poisonous and deadly, and the bites from the mosquitoes and malaria and all the other things that could come along. It was an exciting setting. And yet, it was one of those settings that the players just felt like, wow, this is something I have never experienced before. And they were so pumped about it. And the nearest civilization was up towards the Pirate Kings. So you were in danger of piracy. You were in danger of the natives. You were in danger of the Yuan-Ti. You were in danger of different companies of nasties, the Baneites and who's the one that was after him? Bane and it starts with the C, the other god, and I should remember him. He was the living god who came after the gods fell. It was just a cool setting, guys. And if you want to pick an area, and the airships weren't far from there. They had airships that were down there from the dwarves and the gnomes. There was a whole gnome empire of airships down there. So it was really cool. So you had a lot of things, and you had different moors down there. So the Thar and the marshes that were down there. So there was a lot of marshes that were just nasty, and you could get lost forever in. So it was a great realm. And I looked at Numenera, and it looked like there was a cool jungle there. The Caecilian jungle. Wow, or Sicilian jungle. Again, I don't know much about it, but even in a modern setting, you could always run into like the dinosaurs. So it could be like the Lost Jurassic Park on sci-fi steroids. Um, So you never know the type of mutant nasties. You could find intelligent simians in there. You could find other things that just really lead to some fun settings for even modern. And the type of races and aliens that would develop in a jungle are just crazy fun. Now, let's switch to the other one. Let's go to, for you Pathfinder folks, Southlands. Now, I love it because they have a really, really cool jungle, and they have a cool people, the Kajani. The Kajani were plant folk people. So they're kind of, I don't want to say they're living plants, but they were the plantoid type of creatures, as well as the Nkosi were in that area because, again, a lot of cat folk dwell real well in the jungle. The Tuscully, the bug folk races. These are all playable classes or races by your players, by the way. And the Trollkins. So you had a lot of races in the Southlands you didn't have otherwise. All right, I'm going to leave it alone. I'm just making it big. So what could you find in there? Well, you have the Yachaka jungle and Kush. So the whole Kushite Empire. And if you guys remember Kush, on this kind of likens into what was Africa in the day, jungle Africa. So Kush would be filled with people of very dark skin persuasion. Um, you have a lot of gods and goddesses there. So what kind of things do you run into in Kush? Well, we're going to take a look at that. Hang on real quick. I'm going to go to the page so I can show you some stuff. Um, there we go. Sorry, I'm just finding where Kush is. The high jungles. So 116. All right. So they have a whole area on the high jungles. And I love it because it's a whole type of thing. So, what was there in the jungles? You had a lot of different places. You have the Well of Erd, that was a type of a lost treasure in the area. You also had Erdeval. Erdeval was mostly humans with aeromancers, but there was also intelligent raised up apes. I love it. The gorillas. And again, here's a little bit farther into the Achaka jungle and some of the other jungles that were down there. They also have the Nayunga, and they have some other things that are in the area. And again, as you can see, a more darker, richer skinned people. So they weren't your more Anglo races. Kush has a lot. There was just basically developed by the Archmage Nagwai and the Eternal Lord of Kush. And so they had a lot of people there. They have a couple different cities, Kanjar, Pernoro, and Swedo. And they have Baal Hatep, Mot, Nakresh, Set, and Thoth Hermes were the gods in those areas. I love the jungle because this is a more developed jungle than the normal primal jungle. This is a whole empire of people that grew into a rich empire. Has the worship, has the deities. They aren't just idol worship. They're not just, these ones that worship nature and everything else. This is a total empire that is a strong empire and a trade empire developed out of the jungle area itself. So, another great place to play. And then, of course, you have the inner sea. And I love the inner sea because in the inner sea, there's a lot of jungles, but the Mwangi expanse was a huge one. Now, there's other ones. Again, the Mwangi have both the Gurundi and the Mwangi people. And I love it because they have a whole race of humans that are developed for the Mwangi expanse. Now, the Mwangi expanse, I'm going to take you there and show you. Mwangi is a big area. And you don't just have the Mwangi, you also have the Pirate Isles that are off there. And above it, you have the Sodden Lands. So you have a couple different places. The Sodden Lands were an intelligent group of seers that could see the future. And they were a Gurundi race called the Shori, part of the Shori Empire that grew up out of there. And those are the ones that came into Sky Cities eventually. And they were a very astronomy-based race that used the stars to tell portents of the future. Before them were the different races of the Golgon or the Cyclopean empires. So you can find Golgon ruins, you can find places to the Underdark in these jungles, and you can find a lot of lost cities. There's, in fact, even a lost city that was an air city that crashed. It's the ruins of Ko that are up here in the corner of where you go. And it was a city that had a lot of glass. It was a glass arrow city. And it crashed down. So the danger is all the shattered glass that lays around where the city used to be. And you have Ruthazek, the Gorilla King, who is a demon worshiper. And he took one of the Tal'Doran expansions that came into the area. He took one of the cannons, the World Ender, or the World End cannon that basically was supposed to be there for the Tal'Doran Crusade. The not far from there, in fact, are the Mana Wastes, where they have all the gunpowder. So, of all places, that's a place where it goes for that. And let's see if they mention it in here. They do mention it. I know they do. Um, Usaro, Mwangi, the Gorilla King. Um, and they do mention it, but they don't mention the canon, which is sad. But yeah, the Screaming Jungle. They have the Screaming. They got so many different jungles in the Mwangi. They got the Mwangi Jungle, the Screaming Jungle, which is down near Saragava, and Saragava is another jungle realm down there. There are some civilizations in there, but you go off and the chance of disease is high. And in fact, if you get the Heart of the Jungle expansion for it, it goes into the diseases and the different things that you have to face. And see, a lot of campaigns don't have that. So for the D&Ders, I would get the Heart of the Jungle just from the material that you could use for Chult and some of the other areas, and even in a Greyhawk. You can use a lot of the rules in there for disease and for different peoples, and really develop it. Now the serpent folk were in this one, and the skull, the serpent skull, is an adventure path that is based down in that area. Plus, I've run some ones, the Eye of the Storm and the uh, uh, the Seers of the Drowned City are two major adventures that were set into these areas. So I love it because there's a lot of material on the jungle, and it's just rich with danger and old empires. So keep in mind the challenges of a jungle campaign. How are you going to traverse through the jungle? What kind of supplies do you have? Where is civilization? Where can you get help? What kind of god or clerics are around you that can help you out in those situations? Getting lost. Do you know the area, or are you easily lost? What dangers are there, like sinkholes, quicksand, um, jungle plants that can eat you, carnivorous plants, um, different insects that grow big because they're in the heart of a jungle, spiders, savage tribal elves that are in that area, or savage tribal. They have a race of gnomes down there that are cannibalistic, along with the halflings that are cannibalistic, that will eat you. So those are the little pygmies of the area that they use to kind of go after you. Again, the skin color much deeper, richer mochas to um, olive skin. The people in those areas are not going to be the same as up in the European empires with established gods and goddesses. There's much more of a revere of the jungle itself. So, for Pathfinder, gods like Gozra and Erastil and some of the others are much more worshipped out in those areas. And for D&D, Maliki, and Shantia, the goddesses of nature, much more worship, as well as some tribal older gods that have been lost, more tribalistic, cannibalistic gods, or blends of what would be an aspect of Gozra that came down there. Maybe it's mad seers like up in the Sodden lands where there's drowned areas, or there's just crazy like the Age of Worms where they worshipped the god of worms who became a raised up god because of the aliens that came in and helped him to. Or maybe Cthulhu and the Cthulhu mythos really do well down there. So Dagon and some of the other ones. Understand these areas are just ripe with intrigue, ripe with lost treasures, ripe with chances of never returning again. Now you get plenty of water, but does the water have disease to it? Does it have parasites? Did you take purified food and drink? Did you not? Did you take endure elements or not? Are you wearing the right kind of clothing? Do you have the bug ointments on you to protect you from the local bug things? Do you have the neutralized poison and cure disease if you, in case you just eat something you shouldn't or get a disease you shouldn't that debilitates you? All these are there. Plus, hidden portals to other planes where maybe beings come out. Maybe there's a lost starship there. Maybe there's something that has been lost technology wise for the sci fiers. For the steampunkers, it's the exploring and expansion into the jungles to build new cities, find riches, establish new sources of coal and other things to power the steam, maybe finding magical things that would help power the steam based um, mechanisms, airships, different routes, ship adventures in their boats, bandits. There is so much in this, and so many themes that you could write. It's endless. John Carter, Warlord of Mars, Tarzan. You can pick so many books that are based on the jungle that are fantasy, that are so cool and just great for doing. Don't limit yourself. The jungle can become your best friend. In fact, you could run 20 different campaigns there and never have the same outcome because of where you explore, what you explore, how far you explore, what changes. Does the jungle reclaim what you built? It's a good chance because the jungle is always growing and always looking to cover up what's been built. It is a warlike creature its own right? Is there a green cult there that wants it to be green and get rid of tech and get rid of magic and all the other things that poison it? Are there tribes there of serpent folk and Yuan-Ti that want to reclaim their human slaves and their other races of slaves? And will you become part of that slavery? Or do you have to save a whole city from slavery? Or do you have to prevent it from rising up again to prominence to where they'll conquer the world? There is so many cool things. And that's why this one's going to be a little longer. It's going to be about 24 minutes. I'm sorry it's taking a little longer, but it is my favorite place to run by far. And if I had to pick a realm that I would run in, it's this. This with some piracy mixed in and some good old Caribbean and different type of flair and the Aztecs and Incas and kind of I love the whole thing. And even the Aztec Inca things can bleed into steampunk. It can bleed in maybe their orc pygmies or hobgoblins down there or tribes that have risen up and are trying to become evolved. There is so much you can do, folks. And I just say take the time to research it, get to know it, get to know what effects it has on your players being in a jungle, how the heat affects them, how moist heat affects them versus a dry heat, what diseases will grow, what kind of skin rots, what other things are going to affect your players that normally wouldn't in an arid climate or a cold climate or a temperate climate. What riches are there that you normally can't find? How are you going to get them out of the ground? Are there creatures that are going to oppose you taking them from the ground? Are there whole empires that thrive on enslaving your people to make you part of that process? So many cool things, folks. Don't forget the jungle empires and doing a jungle campaign. You will be richly rewarded by doing one. Again, thanks again. This is GM Rick signing out. Have a great 2017.